Thank you, Washington. Let me first explain that my talk is based on a paper I did for a project that Ijaz is managing out of Washington. It looks at the lagging regions, as he explained, and my focus has been the northwest lagging regions. Here we are looking at two provinces of Pakistan and all of Afghanistan. Now, according to the various criteria that has been developed in the literature, these regions do lag behind the other leading regions of both Pakistan and in India. So in the Pakistani context, of course, Punjab and Sindh are more advanced than NWFP and Balochistan in terms of economic mass and in terms of lower poverty. Now, one of the sort of major conclusions, let me just sort of broadly quickly go over it, is that national efforts to address poverty would be supported by better regional cooperation in spheres that can benefit from cross-border movement of goods, factors, and water and energy resources, through better market access, trade facilitation, communications infrastructure development, and through water resource sharing agreements, and by reducing border tensions through resolution of outstanding issues. However, we have to understand that cooperation in trade and trade facilitation between Afghanistan and the Pakistani provinces carry vastly different importance for the regional partners. The economies of the two provinces are part of the internal common market of Pakistan and linked to the growth centers of the country with access to the sea. While for landlocked Afghanistan, the trade links will be vital, they are vital, to reach international markets and the larger markets of Pakistan. For Afghan exports, currently Pakistan is the biggest market, surpassing US and India. And this trade could grow in the coming years. In contrast, none of Afghanistan's other neighbors, and this is very important, the Central Asian republics, appear in the list of 10 major markets of Afghan exports, although Iran is at the bottom of this list of 10, receiving about 2% of Afghan exports. Part of the reason for greater Afghan trade with Pakistan could be that Pakistan is one of the most open economies in South Asia. And that has to be noted. We are probably more open than India. Maximum tariffs in Pakistan are down to 25%, and there are no restrictive non-tariff barriers. In contrast, none of the other countries in the region, the Central Asian region and Afghanistan, are members of the WTO, although Afghanistan has applied for WTO membership. Liberalization of trade in this area should take place in the context of the multilateral negotiations, given that countries in this region are highly protected and not integrated into the multilateral system. Regional and bilateral FTAs are not the way forward because these carry considerable risks of adverse trade diversion effects. Another possible reason why Afghan trade with Pakistan is much greater than with its neighbors is the fact that Pakistan has made considerable progress to improve trade facilitation in order to benefit from its own multilateral trading arrangements, which has also contributed to its trade with Afghanistan. To facilitate further expansion in trade, Afghanistan would have to improve its own trade facilitation considerably. Considering that currently Pakistan is far ahead of Afghanistan in this area, and partly because Afghanistan is not a member of the WTO and has not been driven by, there's no incentive over there for them to improve facilitation, Pakistani exporters are at a greater disadvantage when seeking market access in the regional countries compared to Afghan traders or other Central Asian traders who are seeking markets in Pakistan. Although documentation in Pakistan has simplified, it's computerized, and everything is conforming to international best practices, the regional benefits will only accrue when the other regional partners also adopt similar techniques so that there can be a smoother exchange of customs data at the time of trade. Now, geographically, Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan hold the key to development of regional trade because of their location. Regional trade here will be influenced by trade facilitation and transport logistics, not only in each individual country, but particularly in Pakistan and Iran, for international trade from the landlocked countries. Similarly, transport logistics, security, and trade facilitation in Afghanistan is particularly important for the intra-regional trade due to the country's geographically central location. Now, the geography plays a very important part over here. Now, in Pakistan, of course, there are all these. The transport system in Pakistan is in the midst of major reform. The existing system generates high economic losses, and there's a mismatch between supply and demand for transport services. But this is an obstacle which Pakistani traders themselves are facing, and is not particularly an impediment for just the regional trade. One of the conclusions of my study in this particular area is that the review of trade, facilitation, logistics, and security situation in Afghanistan would have to improve in a very large way before the binding constraints on the regional trade are removed. Improving security throughout the country, both for persons and property, is most important. The prospects for required changes in the trade environment in the medium term are not very bright, because the time required for the Afghan infrastructure to be in place, peace and stability to return to Afghanistan, and now even to the border regions of Pakistan, where the war has spilled over to Pakistan, this is going to take a long time. And by the time the trade facilitation and other procedures are adopted by the CAS. So trade, yes, trade holds promise for the area, but we have to understand that it is not a short run sort of benefit. It will take time. Pakistan's trade potential with this region will nevertheless remain of minor importance for Pakistan compared to its trade with the rest of the world, which is a much bigger market. Pakistan is a developing country and has its own development agenda, including lagging regions, especially along the two provinces we are talking about. When Pakistan is making its policies, they'll have to look at regions which are leading regions towards Western China via the KKH and towards the Indian market, because that's where the greater benefits for Pakistan will lie. So there's going to be a difference in the prioritization of countries in the region. And this would hold true for any lagging region, that there are more benefits in seeking access in leading regions than to group all the lagging regions together. This does not mean that greater access between the lagging regions, facilitate access to the leading regions, should not take place. But in terms of the, shall we say, the relative advantages, of course, focus on the leading regions would be of greater advantage. Pakistan would have to spend its scarce resources in a way that they can prioritize which infrastructure and in which direction they develop. But whatever development Pakistan does will benefit the landlocked regions, because they'll be able to take advantage of the facility. In the meantime, Pakistan and South Asia need to look at the growing markets in Asia, where the potential for trade is likely to be much larger than within the lagging region. Asia has grown at much faster pace than the USA and EU, and especially we are talking about China and East Asia. In recent years, Asia has become an increasingly important partner in the world economy. Many Asian economies grew at a much faster pace. If Asian economies maintain their relative strong performance compared to the rest of the world, China could have the largest share in world output, surpassing the USA. And this would represent an unprecedented shift in the focus of world economic activity in modern history, with important implications for businesses the world over. Another two areas that my paper focuses on, and I'll quickly go over them. One is the regional cooperation in sharing water resources. Now, Pakistan and Afghanistan are located in the watershed of some of the great rivers emanating from the Hindu Kush, Karakoram, and the Himalayan mountain ranges. Both are crossed by international rivers. which are vital for their own people and for the people of adjoining countries. While water resources in both countries are underdeveloped compared to the full potential of these resources, the use of these international rivers is constrained by the obligations under international law with respect to such rivers. Here, for Afghanistan, I'm referring to the basins of the Kabul River, the Helmand, and the Amud Darya. Now, although the annual per capita availability is great, the runoff of the river is highly variable. So the manner in which the waters are exploited is a politically sensitive issue. There is much to be learned from Pakistan's experience of sharing international rivers with its eastern neighbor, India. My paper has a more detailed discussion of the Indus Basin Treaty with India, how that has, so far at least, been able to resolve the potential conflict between the two countries. Now, Pakistan is sharing the water basin of the Kabul River with Afghanistan, and I hope that both the countries will develop the water resources of this river after taking into account the international obligations of both of these to each other. Refugees and border recognition. This is the other topic that I have discussed in my paper. Now, Pakistan has been host to refugees from Afghanistan since 1978, when the Flower Revolution took place over there. And as of the latest census that I have with me by UNHCR, in 2005, there were still over 3 million Afghans living in Pakistan. This is a continuing source of problems for Pakistan. Number one, that the developed countries' contribution to the maintenance of these refugees has declined over the years, and Pakistan is bearing an increasing burden of the refugees. Now there are additional issues of security and so forth. There is a campaign. Pakistan has started, shall we say, a campaign to try and encourage these people to move back voluntarily with the help of UNHCR. But so far, there hasn't been too much success. And the main reason is that conditions in Afghanistan would have to improve for these people to feel that it's worth going back to their own country, both in terms of security and in terms of economic opportunity. Then the last issue that really impinges on the regional development is that of the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan, the Durand Line. While Pakistan has always recognized the Durand Line as an international border with Afghanistan since its independence, Afghanistan has not done so. This sort of lingering issue has been a damper on many initiatives which could be of great use to the two countries. And I think that an early settlement of this issue by Afghanistan would probably be in the interest of people of Afghanistan and of Pakistan. We have seen now that the fact that this border has not been recognized is now having a direct impact on the, shall we say, the various ways in which we are trying to stop the movement of, the illegal movement of people across the border. When Pakistan tried to fence the border, Afghanistan saw that as an attempt to formalize the Durand Line as a border and resisted that. But it definitely had an effect on the success of stopping the movement of people that was. So these pending issues between two very poor and developing regions is, I think, an imperative before we can have investment in the area, before we can effectively bring about any change in the lives of the millions of poor who live in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Khan from Islamabad. Thank you for your words.